Tonight on The Breakdown, we dissect the fairy tales and storylines of the Rugby World Cup. Special guest Glenn Jackson gives his expert insight into the controversies from the tournament, and we discuss another exciting week of Mitre 10 Cup. All this and the good, bad and ugly on The Breakdown.
Kia ora, welcome into The Breakdown. Great to have you with us tonight here on Sky Sport. I'm Jeff McTaint, off the bench for Goldie, and an all-star panel as always here on the show. Former All Blacks Richard Kahui, Justin Marshall, Andy Allison, to keep them all in line. Glenn Jackson, top whistleblower. Good to see you, Glenn. And that's an outstanding slug for the 1st of October.
No, it is not.
Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger, unfortunately. But no, it's for Movember build-up.
You're building up.
Sponsoring the referees for Mitre 10, so I thought we'd...
Do you need a build-up? Because doesn't it, you shave at the first
well, look how red it is. I want to get rid of it.
You would need a worthy cause to be growing that, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Is that standing, Richard? Good to see you here. A lot of World Cup action. I'm sure you've been following it each game. Does it make you want to get back out there and pull the boots on?
Well, a part of me wants to, but like 99% of me doesn't. It looks really physical, really high tempo rugby, but geez, it's a really great tournament so far.
You've still been playing a fair bit. Have you had the temptation to maybe see if they need another halfback over there?
Not really, but it is exciting. Rich and I both play rugby in Japan still now, and just seeing the guys playing at some of the stadiums we play at, and the crowd sold out, and people having a good time and experiencing the Japan that we love playing rugby in. It's a wee bit of an itch.
It's just the support, not just at the grounds, but around the grounds, outside at the fan zones, and looks like an amazing tournament so far. You
just got back, Marshall. We'll touch on the World Cup more shortly, but a flying visit for you. How did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed it, actually. Off the back of what both the lads were saying, like Japan's really, I guess it was the unknown, wasn't it, for Japan? How were they going to be as hosts? Not really a rugby country as such, but absolutely amazing atmosphere there. The stadiums have been incredible. And the way the Japanese people have gone into the stadiums and they've been given the national anthems of all the other teams and singing that as well. They've really embraced it. It's been awesome.
Is there anything that stood out that you've really loved about Japan?
Well, I really enjoyed the hospitality of the stadiums, like the way that they sort of engage everybody. They want to make everybody feel like they're at home, having a good time. And it's weird because there's a lot of neutrals there, which is quite strange too. But the way that they went about that was bang on.
Cuisine is fantastic, that is sure right. Plenty to tuck in tonight here on The Breakdown at the World Cup. Let's look at the last week in Japan.
This is sport we play and you can't predict it, you can't predict the outcome.
It's huge.
They were the better team today and they deserve to win.
Really inspiring.
Quite a historic result.
In the future generations, that will really impact in our country.
That's a tough defeat for us to take.
We have been preparing for this game for a hell of a lot longer than the Irish have.
I think the strength of the team will be how they respond and how they rebound from this.
You feel really proud as a coach and as a rugby team, and certainly didn't want to let down the country. And
we want to stay in with a chance of topping the pool. Certainly, we've got to get in the top two.
We believed, and you have to play right to the 80 minutes to get that bonus point. It obviously is something now that we're really glad we got.
We're one win from 2 games. You know, both Scotland and Ireland are exactly the same.
To see the effort, the togetherness was excellent.
So obviously we know that we can win them, we can beat them.
There's a bit of us versus everyone else.
World Cup, a lot more at stake.
And about knockout stages, we just wanted to win the medal. You know, the pools and our own sort of destiny.
Slow-mo make it look like anything, right?
Referees are worried about making a wrong decision.
Timo didn't help us there.
Don't know the rules anymore. Honestly, don't know the rules anymore. When this guy doesn't think about the high tackle framework, we get penalised. Like, as a rugby player, as a former player, I'm embarrassed about that.
Just as much drama off the field as there is on it, isn't there, guys? It's what we love about World Cups, Richard, and I suppose that the big one from the latest week has been Japan's amazing effort against Ireland.
Yeah, and it's really hard to look past that game as not the highlight of the World Cup. You know, it's a second-tier nation beating one of the giants, someone that's favoured to win the World Cup, so a great start from there. I think it's probably going to add a lot to the World Cup there, Andy.
Oh, I'm so stoked for them. And like Jamie Joseph said, they've been building for this game a lot longer than the Irish have been building for it. And with quality coaching like Jamie and Brownie and Scotty Hansen in there now too, I kind of had a wee feeling that they were going to do something special, and I thought maybe it was going to be Scotland that they'd do it against. That was where I'd put a wee tenner on, but they've come through early, and Ireland, and they'll just keep going, Marshy. The
week started well, didn't it, Marshy, though, with Uruguay and what they did against Fiji? Yeah. No one saw that one coming.
I think that's probably been the highlight of the tournament so far, that the games that you were tuning into at the pool games that you thought would be pretty mandatory, every team's put up a fight. Right from the opening game, even the Russia-Japan game I thought was really going to blow out. It didn't. You know, Russia hung in there, and then Japan had to work hard. So that's probably been the biggest success, that the second-tier teams seem to have caught up a bit, which is great because it makes you want to watch.
What's that like as a ref when you're reffing a game where you know that one team's supposed to win, but the second-tier team is winning it? How do the refs feel in that moment?
Yeah, well, I think it probably happens more at World Cups than it does in any other tournament.
Yeah, right.
As Marshy said, I think the second-tier ones, I've been with them for a little bit now, reffing them, and they've definitely produced better rugby players, better coaching involved as well. So those games there, you sort of think the way it should go, but obviously understanding now how much preparation these second-tier nations have put into, I think have created much better games.
So it's not as unexpected from a ref point of view?
No, definitely not.
We'll touch on that more later on in the show, guys. But let's head to Japan now, where John Kerwin, Mills Molina is standing by, guys. You've both got close connections to the country. Just how impressive and special, JK, we'll start with you, was that victory for Japan over Ireland?
Oh, unbelievable. I was there with a group of Japanese, and the belief just kept growing in the stand. I mean, the Japanese, as supporters, normally with rugby they're really quiet, Mills, but they were just so into it. But the interesting thing, and you know, the boys that play in Japan will tell you, we could sort of see it happening because I don't think the Irish were used to the line speed that the Japanese can create. Once they start getting you over the advantage line and their forwards are coming forward, setting up and getting off the line, you could see the Irish sort of void of ideas. They were just under so much pressure, and with that the Japanese just grew in confidence, and honestly, when you were sitting there you thought, actually, Ireland have got nothing, Mills. They had nothing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what we've seen as well, I really enjoyed the physicality of some of the Japanese boys. And so what sort of influence has some of the foreigners had in the competition over here? You guys are sitting back home having been massive influence on some of the players, but also the Sunwolves and what they've been in Super Rugby. And you sort of started seeing that skill unfold. That last try that got them over the line, I mean, that was a skill in itself because they didn't have an overlap. So in terms of the hype here now, you know, people are absolutely right behind them. Even people not from Japan, you know, I bumped into some Americans yesterday. They're actually going for Japan. So it's an exciting time ahead, boys.
Yeah, lads, Marshy here. We'll throw Japan out of the mix, and also the three teams we know the most about, Australia, South Africa, and obviously the All Blacks. Given all of that, what's the other team that's impressed you the most in the opening exchanges of this tournament?
Well, believe it or not, Marshy, you were here for it as well. I think it's South Africa. You know, when you look back at that game, I've looked at Ireland. We spoke about it about 4 weeks ago. Are they a year too late from an age point of view? You know, Scotland have been disappointing. So I think the other team that you go, well, they lost to the All Blacks, but they were pretty good at times, and I think that loss is going to help them. I think they're the second best side at the moment.
Yeah, they certainly do look pretty good. You know, the Australian-Wales game the other day, I know that was a close game, but I like the way, you know, the Welsh should have hung in there from a mental point of view in terms of some of their decision-making as well. You know, there was easily moments there that they won back, and on the other hand, I know some controversy in it. The Australians sort of, you know, try to fight their way back, but I just like the way, you know, the Welsh should have hung in there, and I definitely think from a mental point of view, you know, they've lifted their game in that department.
I mean, I'll probably throw back to you, Jacko. One of the things that we're all talking about here is the referees' decisions, and it just looks like they've had some direction from above to just really go after any sort of foul play. We saw it with the Australia game, and don't you love Checker? He just has a blow-up at every press conference, creates sort of news by himself. But then also last night, you know, the Samoan player sliding, and I mean, as a referee, how do you deal with that? I mean, do you get direction from above? It just seems that everyone's a little bit confused at the moment, and I'm a bit worried that someone said you've got a dirty slug rolling, mate, so I'm glad I'm not there to look at that.
Okay, no, obviously the direction from up top is that we need our game to be safe. So that's been going for the last 2 years now. I think the balance of how we're trying to get it at a World Cup hasn't been quite right, and it's difficult because we want our 12-year-olds to want to play the game and carry on enjoying this game. So As you said, I mean, I think we always knew the referees were going to come under fire at this World Cup. Happening so early is probably a bit of a shock, and with so many games, it didn't actually mean a result was changed. It's just been a bit of a shame that's the gloss of the World Cup sometimes at the moment.
Millsy, Andy here, change tact a little bit. Can Ireland still win this World Cup?
Oh, great question, Andy. I think they can. I think, you know, there's a lot of hurt after that result. You know, they were certainly put under immense pressure. But, you know, I go back to, you know, right before the tournament when Steve Hansen came out and said, you know, the team that's going to, you know, deal with pressure the most will be the team that sort of wins it. And now, you know, the Irish have come into this tournament, you know, heavily favourites. You know, they ended up, you know, number 2 after a while. But, you know, can they bounce back? They've certainly got the talent to be able to. I think they've got the physicality, you know, the way they turned up against the Scottish. But they were missing someone. I was very surprised that, you know, they didn't back up with Sexton again. And they needed to do that. Yeah, can they win it? Well, I think they still can. I think there's belief in the camp. They'll need to get the act together, and you know, unfortunately for their case, they need to, you know, get it fast. And fortunately, you know, they've got Russia next.
I just to jump in there, Andy, I don't think they're the same football team without Sexton. There's a rumour that he might have quite a bad groin, and they're a bit worried about him. But the other night against Japan, they were just void of ideas. Their kicking game was average, and I just think he is world class and can run a game. And so if he's missing from their side, I don't think they're going to have the tactical knowledge to do what they need to do under pressure, but also he takes so much confidence out of the team. And I didn't see anything from the 2 backup first fives that gave them any confidence. With him out there, I think, yeah, they're still a contender. And maybe that loss is going to be the best thing that happened. Without him, average.
JK, you talk about the development of Japanese rugby, likes of the Sunwolves and Super Rugby. Let's talk about some of those individual players in that performance against Ireland, guys that Richard and Andy have actually played with over there. Shota Hori, and I know you've coached the likes of these players, JK. Just how impressive their personal development?
Oh, I think, I mean, the crowd around us was just starting to chant, Hori, Hori. You know, he was outstanding. That's probably the best game I've seen him play. I mean, he reminded me a lot of Kevi Mialamu, Millsy. You know, he's not a huge man, but he's, you know, he loves pulling his pants up and showing you his thighs. But he was outstanding defensively, nailed his line-outs, the scrum was strong, and that was the biggest performance I've seen. But, yeah, you know, both you guys, Andy and Richard, you'd love this. Luke Thompson has not trained for 8 years. He just plays. And he was outstanding. Yeah, he's been blaming his ankle.
Richard Cowie has it in his contract as well.
Exactly.
He's paid,
don't train, just play.
Millions.
But Luke Thompson came on the game before and really brought physicality, but he was outstanding the other night at 38. You know, we can joke about it because he's always saying, oh, I can't really train. But he was so physical. He was bashing them. And he walked off, and the whole crowd was, you know, he rubbed it in. He had his hands on top of his head, looked like he was about to pass out. But that physicality, Mills, was really... the Irish weren't ready for it. No, exactly, and that's what I mean. When I mentioned it before, the influence that these guys have had, they've been here for a very long time. Yeah, I know there's always criticism about guys coming into different countries and playing, but what I was impressed with, especially afterwards, he talked to himself, to Thompson, also Michael Leach, fluent Japanese. You know, they answered all their questions in Japanese and things like that, but also the influence the Sunwolves have had. You know, you've seen it with the Argentinians and how they've come through Super Rugby. Now all of a sudden, I think it's starting to sort of filter into the Japanese. You know, I hope it does continue. I certainly, when you talk about Horia and the way he's played and turned himself into a great hooker, you know, there's certainly, I suppose, times now that Japanese rugby can really start to lift.
All right, guys, stay there. We'll come back to you very shortly indeed. But we'll turn our attention now to the Iron Japan. We'll take a closer look at the pools over there. We'll start with Pool D. And, guys, we've talked about it already, the Wales-Australia game. Marshy, it had a bit of everything, not the least of which controversy.
Yeah, it did, and this is a very difficult pool as well. And you know, you think about the Fiji game, how they managed to drop theirs, and all of a sudden, you know, what are they going to do and who are they going to respond against? You know, you have to be nervous about that. But yeah, unfortunately, there is controversy involved in a big game, and when that happens, it puts massive amount of pressure on the team that is on the wrong side of that controversy, and that was obviously Australia. So it's really opened the pool up, isn't it?
Yeah, it has, and I think with the way Cheika's going about talking about referees and thing, I just wonder, Andy, how much that influences the players. I know we never really had it much as players where coaches would directly go at referees after a game, and we're starting to see something that we're not typically used to.
It's such a hard one, isn't it? Because, and I wanted the Welsh to win, but I feel like the Aussies were robbed. We're robbed a bit. So but maybe he's not dealing with it the right way, and then it does sort of flow into the team environment, and then you still sort of start feeling, and I've heard the language being used by some of the other boys, it's them against us, and they're starting to use that language. I don't think that's healthy in a camp.
No, and I think just on that, Michael Hooper, for me, is an excellent captain. Like, and when he was with the Waratahs, I've reffed him a few times. With Australia, he's a great captain and normally pretty well controlled, but in that game, I think, as you talked about, there, Richard, might have been a bit of frustration through the camp, and then his dealing with the referee, obviously, in this game, probably let himself down a little bit. I still also thought he made some very valid points at the right time, but just obviously, as you talk about, when the camp starts talking about it, it flows right through to the players.
It creates a negative environment, doesn't it? And it's like a snowball, starts to build. And
yeah, I agree. I think we all agree it was a poor decision, don't we? Like, initial contact's on the chest, that happens a lot in the game, and every now and then it'll go up to somewhere else. Do we agree on that? Because what it is it's not... it hasn't influenced the game in terms of a TMO decision or a try or anything like that. But at that stage of the game, Australia had momentum, and it swung the game.
Yeah.
And when you talk about massive games that are very important to win, and you have a decision like that, that's why Cheika's upset. That's why Hooper's upset, because Australia were fighting their way back into the game. And I think that's probably the biggest problem to come out of it.
Well, Wales kicked the 3, didn't they? Then it was the kick-off.
They scored off.
Yeah, they scored off. So it was actually a 10-pointer, really.
Yeah.
And the other big game of the pool, guys, of course, Richard, was the Uruguayans' performance against Fiji. As we said at the start of the show, no one really saw that one coming, but it really just lit that spark that the tournament so desperately needed.
Yeah, and I think when you see Japan beat Ireland and Uruguay beat Fiji, it just shows that you can't underestimate these second-tier nations. And Fiji rested a dozen of their players, so they didn't pick that as a game that they really needed to focus on. They thought they'd rest their stars, and then that's the result you got. And you saw a tearful captain after the game, and it's really great for rugby, really great for the World Cup, and it just adds to the whole spectacle of Rugby World Cup.
Righty, let's take a look at Pool C, and there England is with 2 wins now, 10 points out in front ahead of Argentina. What have we made, Marshy, of the performance of Eddie Jones's side so far at the tournament?
They've been clinical. They've done what they needed to do. They've managed to rotate players, which has been good. I think they've been exceptional. The big one was for me on that opening round, and I was over there, I was like this, when France won. Like, nobody was talking about France, were they? Nobody. No. And you know what France are like in Rugby World Cups? They're a nightmare, and especially for us. And for them to turn up and beat Argentina, that has thrown some complexity into that pool, big time. Like, everyone was going England, Argentina. Now we're going, hang on, the French, they're here to play. They love it.
And kickers, like the French have been pretty average in the last couple of years in Europe too. And they played great footy, right? They played good footy in that match, and it's so French, isn't it? They come and the big lights are on, and there's the crowds there, and they're playing for their country, and there they are in a nutshell.
I think this is still a tough one. We haven't seen a lot of England. They've got 10 points, and for me, they're still probably one of the favourites of the tournament. They're doing everything right. Eddie's a smart coach. They've got some really good... We talk about the 10s of the tournament. They've got 2 really good 10s, some good 9s. And, they're going to be building up because they've obviously got Argentina and France leading into the quarters. So, in terms of, if you look how the All Blacks go, England's actually building at the right place to really click at the right time.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick look at Pool B and just see where things stand there. Of course... Italy at the moment out in front at least, but I'm sure that will change in the coming days at the event. Rightio, on to Pool A, and this is one really, guys, that I suppose at the start of the event when you looked at the World Cup in Japan, you thought Ireland out in front and then who's going to take second, but really, Richard, it's just blown it wide open, that performance from the Japanese.
Yeah, it really has, and someone like Samoa now becomes a banana skin game. So you've got 3 teams vying for a quarter-final spot. I think the last game of the round is Japan-Scotland, which is going to be absolutely massive. Marshy?
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like, the way that Japan have launched into this tournament, they were always targeting the Scotland game. I know this because I had a whack around the squash court with Tony Brown, and he said we want to obviously win the ones we're supposed to win, really pressure Ireland, and then target Scotland. Well, man, they've knocked Ireland over. So now they could top the pool.
What was the score on the squash court, quickly?
Yeah, he
You got it
managed
done.
to sneak in.
Okay.
I'm disappointed in Samoa. That's a team full of European-based players, so with some quality coaching and, as we know, physical and great skill sets. And they've been a little bit disappointing at the tournament so far.
The amount of players that they've lost with yellow cards and suspensions. So they've just lost another one with Fido on the weekend. It's hard to win a tournament when you give away so many penalties and lose so many players.
Well, Scotland are definitely under the pump now to try and qualify for the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Mills Malina caught up with the Scottish and Samoan fans after that game last night.
Muri Waina. Legend. All about legend.
Oh, nice. Nice, Dave. Hey, what happened today, though?
I don't know.
How was that, Ulf?
I think it was pretty close. Second half, I think they put up just a bit in front of us.
They play well. You know.
No, I'm scared.
The camera's not gonna.
Come on! Woo!
Samoa Day.
Had some good moments, some were not quite so good. We were put under a bit of pressure, but a lot better than last week.
I like the outside centre Harris. Yeah. He got marked down there, he did well.
Referee?
Yeah, I think it was a referee.
What our strategy is at the moment is we're trying to make New Zealand think we're really bad, because then when we beat them in the quarter-final, no one will expect it.
They need to go and have a hard look at themselves in the mirror. That is a disgrace to that badge. We are on fire.
We're back. We're back. We're back. You Samoa?
Perfect time. That's all I speak.
Pretty intense, but I think we could have done better. We could have done better, yeah.
If you ask Doddy Weir or Gavin Hastings what they thought of that, they'd be ashamed of that. Have a look at yourselves.
Too much colour?
Yeah, too much colour, man.
There's lots of colour in Japan as well, and a little bit of love.
That's not going to help us, but...
I'm rooting for Japan. Go Japan. Number one in that pool.
Scotland, Japan.
Samoa, Japan.
Japan quarter-final. Yeah?
I hope so,
yeah. Ganbare.
Arigato.
Japan! 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 Japan!
That looked like a fun night. Let's bring the gents back in. Mills, what happened after that? A few sakis mixed with a few single malts, or did you get to bed nice and early?
I wish I did, but I was that tired from jumping up and down that I wanted to go to bed. So it was a fairly quiet night. But judging from some of those fans, Japan, well, they're pretty favourable at the moment.
Let's talk about Scotland. A lot of pressure on that side now to make the quarters of this World Cup, given the shape of that pool.
Oh, that pool is a horror. When you look at it, you think, wow, who is going to win it? Japan have been outstanding, Mills, but still it's all to play for. That bonus point last night under, funny circumstances was gold for the Scottish. I just don't think they're good enough to make it, to be fair. Last night they had 80% of the possession and still didn't look that great, I didn't think. I thought Samoa were disappointing, Mills, but really I think that Japan need to go through.
Yeah, I agree with, I think Andy mentioned it before. I mean, what you guys wouldn't have seen at home, it was very muggy in Corby, and so, this ball was slippery, but I was disappointed with the execution. The Scottish, and you would have heard one of those fans, he wasn't impressed at all, even though they won convincingly. But I just can't see anything in them. I like they've got some nice, some nice back moves and things like that. But against an opposition and the defensive effort that Samoa are putting in, it's fairly easy to get over, or past them. But I just can't see it in the Scots to get there. So for me, really, it's a really good chance now for the Irish to get themselves back on the board in Russia, and then Irish and Japan to go through.
Look at this New Zealand team now for the second game against Canada. Second game of pool play for Steve Hanson's side, 11 changes, largely expected.
Yeah, and I'm not worried at all. I thought they were really good changes. I think the nice thing for the All Blacks that are sitting there getting selected, when they see other teams getting upset, they won't want that on their All Black watch. I think there's a lot to play for. Sonny Bill Williams, really excited to see, Rico play. Mills, he's going to have to up his work rate. Everyone will probably be looking for the try scoring, but the coach will be looking for the cover tackles, and that general work rate.
Well, this is perfect for Steve Hansen and his coaching staff, to be able to re-emphasise to the guys. We've seen a few, 10 odd days before our next game, but now we've seen a few upsets and things like that. All of a sudden, there's already competition within the group. You've got guys coming into it now, fairly excited. I'm with you. I'm happy that Rico gets an opportunity. Patrick Tuipulotu gets a start as well. And also Todd coming back into the fold. So there's plenty there, and that's a great thing about the All Blacks at the moment. We've got some good quality depth in our squad. So I think there'll be a few guys that they're looking forward to getting out there against the Canadians and having a massive game.
Millsy, it's Richard here. You talk about players having an opportunity. Who needs to really put their hand up if they want to play in those quarterfinals, semi-finals, those big games?
Well, it's fair to say, Cucks, that, there's all of the talk that has been about Rico. All of a sudden, he's been the starting winger. He's fell off and plateaued a little bit. And then two other wingers have come and sort of, overtaken. There's going to be lots of eyes watching on how he performs. From my view, I think it's the stuff that he does off the ball. Outside the square box. Working hard off the ball, things like that, opening up little wee gaps. For his midfielders and things like that. So for me, it's probably Rico. I'd like to see the competition in the midfield and how that sort of blossoms. J.K. Goodhue and Sonny Bill Williams gets an opportunity now.
Yeah, well, Goodhue, does his hamstring in Perth. Haven't seen him since. He was probably number one then. Anton Lienert-Brown stood into that position. You couldn't probably leave him out, so he's playing for a lot. I think there's a lot of actually going on the bench as well. So you've got Patrick, and Barrett going for what? If Retallick's back, are they going for the best bench spot? So there's a lot to play for. There's bench places, there's starting places. If Goodhue plays well, will he put him into the starting lineup? So it's an intriguing one. But the first thing they have to do is forget about that and get their jobs right and really stick it to Canada early, really intimidate them, really be physical and make sure they take them out of the equation early, so then you can concentrate on maybe doing some stuff that's going to impress the selectors.
JK, Geordie Barrett at 14. I know there's been a bit of chatter around him coming into first receiver and playing 10 at the tournament. Do you think maybe we'll see that at the back end of the game against Canada?
Yeah, I think we'll be looking for Hansen to be trying stuff through injuries. I think what we'll see is an early kicking game. I really like Geordie at 14 when he played against Italy last November. They played a good kicking game. He gets up above the opposition. So that's a really good attacking piece. And then I didn't think they'd play the dual pivot again. I thought they might rest Barrett, but they played that. So maybe early in the piece, put his brother back there, get him off the field and see if he can play that dual pivot role. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of that. And I think what Hansen will be doing once the game's won is looking at options moving forward towards the playoffs if other injuries occur.
Lads, do you think Steve Hansen's changed his mindset with the Irish result, the way it is, that we could possibly now meet Ireland in a quarter-final, that the rotation will stop? This will be the last time he does it because he's going into a quarter-final now that could be a lot more difficult than expected?
Yeah, Marsha, you know how hard it is. I mean, we're talking sudden death, and instead of maybe 2 games in a row that you've got to win, you're talking 3. I mean, probably the only person that was a little bit disappointed from a personal point of view would have been Hansen Mills, because, probably Scotland or Japan is a better proposition just because of the attrition rate. I mean, this has been an incredibly physical World Cup up until now, Mills, and, if you've got Ireland and then whoever else, and then a final. That's 3 big weeks.
That's huge, but I think he's got a good lead up going into it. He's got a game now, Canada. He's still got plenty of stability there with Kieran Reid, Moonga, and Barrett at the back, sort of I suppose still leading the charge. But I think you look at the next games ahead, Namibia, obviously, and then Italy, and so really he's got a good opportunity now to say, well, here's where my squad's at. Maybe focus on that last game before going into the quarterfinals to really have a really good squad. He's got stability in terms of the Moanga and Barrett phase. How he uses that will be really interesting to me, but I don't think he would have looked too much, Marshy, in terms of what's happened with the Irish. I think they would have gone in with a plan, reevaluated it after week 1 and thought, well, let's try and keep to this and sort of see what happens. The perfect thing for them is that they've got some good lead-in games, relatively easier ones before hopefully the quarterfinals.
Interested to know, JK, just before we let you go, where are you dining tonight? Where are you taking Mills?
Oh, very interesting. We have a really nice traditional Japanese fish yakitori place, which does raw fish as well, but also yakitori. You sit back and they just bring it out on a paddle for you. So we'll be thinking of you guys while we're eating.
Well, we've had sushi tonight in the green room, but it's not quite that up to that spec. Thanks very much indeed, guys. Enjoy. Before, Mills is loving it, before Marshy came back from the World Cup, he caught up with a man who's played a bit of rugby over in Japan, Reefton's finest, Marty Banks.
Well, Marty, thanks for joining us, mate. How's life? Here we are in Japan. Park, it's all good?
Yeah, it's awesome. Obviously, woke up this morning, it was a bit cooler. Put a jersey on and now I'm too scared to take the t-shirt off to see what's underneath. So other than that, mate, it's not bad, not bad.
How do you find the culture and the lifestyle like?
Yeah, it's a long way from Dunedin, long way from the West Coast, mate. So I should correct myself there, but yeah, it's obviously a massive culture difference, but you know, there's a few Kiwis around that sort of keep you pretty grounded and give you that home feel. But yeah, obviously you've got to adapt to a new way of life, get used to sushi, but love the food and the people are obviously really nice.
You've been here, you've had a few seasons. I also believe there's a lot of training goes on.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm probably not the best person in the gym, Marshy, as most people can probably see, but 4 months of pre-season we've got coming up, so we started about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, no, it should be all right, so hopefully get fit, get a bit stronger and hit the season running.
So people, like, I'll be blatantly honest about this. People would say, oh, people go to Japan and they're basically just winding down their career, but it's a bit more than that, isn't it? Like, with a lot of the foreigners here now, it's actually quite strong rugby, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you look around some of the teams and that, there's, obviously you can use Carter's team as an example. You've got Buckman and Tom Franklin and the list goes on, and it's actually a really strong team, and all the other teams now are buying players from all over the place. So you're looking at this competition and it's actually not weak at all. People say you come over here and not get bashed up, but you're actually playing probably guys that you'd play in New Zealand.
So when you're sitting back watching the All Blacks, how do you think they're tracking?
Yeah, I think they're tracking really good. Playing Africa early on and getting that win. It's obviously it was the game that we're targeting to knock off, and to see Bodie and the Richie thing working pretty smoothly, it's pretty exciting. 2 world-class players. Bodie's a good mate, and seeing him get the ball in space and in the width is pretty exciting.
So when you think about the future for you?
Oh, obviously I'd love to, what am I now, I just turned 30, feel it too. I got reminded yesterday by Bender that I'm only hitting my prime, so, but yeah, I'd love to play for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and then I'd like to get into coaching once I'm done, all going well. I'd love to get back and give back to Tasman. At some stage I'd love to try and play 1 more season there, and obviously try and jump on the gravy train now. They're going really well. So
good luck with that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's what I'd love to do, is just get into coaching and try and give back to rugby a bit.
Well, you're a success story, mate, and we really appreciate you talking to us. All the best with the future.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, Marshy.
Welcome back into the breakdown. You've plenty of chatter at the World Cup about the level of officiating, and of course Wallabies coach Michael Cheika has certainly had plenty to say about it, hasn't he, Steph?
Yeah, so once again, I find myself here talking about what Michael Cheika has said now. And it seems that every time the Wallabies lose, classic, it's someone else's fault. And now they've even been called the whinging Wallabies by the media. He's even gone as far as saying that he doesn't know the rules anymore. Michael Cheika just keeps getting better and better at this Rugby World Cup.
Well, the stuff on the ground, like, I'm not quite sure what's going on.
I'm not obliged to answer the question, am I?
It was pretty funny because I thought I'd seen that tackle before. It could have been Reece Hodge. I'm not sure. Really didn't see it. I didn't even see it in the game.
What's the legal term? We've deliberated, yes, with our QC and several other legal minds around Australia, and we've come to the conclusion that we won't be appealing.
I prefer they come up to me and get upset with me if they're really upset about it, not to then talk to me in that nice sort of friendly chitty-chat way and then go behind your back. I don't know every directive. I don't know if that's illegal or not. I don't know anymore. I don't know the rules anymore. Honestly, don't know the rules anymore. There's a bit of us versus everyone else. As a rugby player, as a former player, I'm embarrassed about that.
Having beaten
my favourite, Daily Mail. Fantastic. Remember you chaps from last time. Just got the courage to come back, have you? Get focused on what's important. That's a match on Sunday. I can tell you right now, if there's one bloke World Rugby's not listening to, it's me. Okay, no matter what language I speak to them in.
He's definitely a bit of a character when it comes to his post-match comments, but I've got to say, guys, do you think he has a slight point when it comes to his frustration, or not?
I'll fire that one to you, Glenn Jackson. What do you reckon?
Look, every game's going to have a decision you disagree with. Now, a lot of coaches can just park that up and move on, and their players will go into the next game. Czech's very good at just letting rip. You know, I mean, he does it in the box. It's quite comical if they go on it, but also the referee can see that big screen as well. So it's, you know, like he's definitely had a few things that have gone against him. And in a pool like Australia-Wales, you know, it's you want the right side of the coin all the time, but unfortunately, you know, when he gets it wrong, he'll let everyone know.
You've obviously played, we've all played, but you sign up for that, don't you? You know that when you go out on the field, there's a guy blowing the whistle who's a human being, so they actually, you know, we do make mistakes, don't we, Andy?
Yeah, well, what I want to know is, do you feel pressure from the coaches as a ref, like in a build-up to a game, if a ref is saying things about certain decisions that are being made, as a ref, do you listen to them? Are you watching the media, and does it affect you in any way?
No, I mean, Michael's very good at when you meet him before a game, like coaches are allowed to talk to the referees. He's very relaxed, he's quite comical, you know, he's very personable, but, you know, I think this Rugby World Cup, you've got to remember, and 2 years ago, I think we all looked into it, and that there's about 7 head coaches of Tier 1 nations moving on, who have been there for a long time, and anyone can win this World Cup. So any little decision that goes wrong, we knew 2 years ago, I think, you know, before I didn't go, that it was going to be tough work. You know, like in terms of what we're looking at in terms of safety, high tackles, TMOs, there was always going to be some things that came out of it that made it difficult.
Maybe it is because a lot of those Tier 1 nations coaches are a bit more experienced, so they're quite confident. So you've got guys like Eddie Jones and Reza Erasmus who are prepared to say stuff through the week and put pressure on refs. You know, as the weeks leading up, I know that first game, South Africa versus the All Blacks, Reza Erasmus was saying, you know, it's important we get the calls right. This ref usually favours the All Blacks, not us. And so I think as we come into those big playoff games, that bantering and that sort of chat through the week might happen even more, Kackers, I don't know.
Yeah, well...
Eddie Jones.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. We don't want to put too much pressure on the referees. Steve Hansen came out and said, you know, let's just let them go because there is enough pressure. But I see Czech and I feel for him because he's obviously a man under pressure. It's not just this World Cup. It's been building the last sort of 2-3 years. They're not getting the results. And this is where he needs to deliver. So I can understand it. Hopefully everyone backs off the referees a little bit, but hopefully that we get the right calls. And I think that's important in the end, that we get the correct calls on the field and everything will go away.
Well, the journos in Japan have had a lot to say as well. Let's go to Gregor Paul now from the New Zealand Herald, who joined us on the breakdown. Good to have you with us, Gregor. Now, tell me, a lot has been said from Michael Cheika, a lot has been said, but does he actually raise a few valid points?
Oh, look, there's no doubt that Michael could probably start a fight in an empty phone box. He's that kind of guy. He's pugnacious. He puts himself out there. He lives it, doesn't he? He's got huge emotion. But he's also, in this particular occasion, he's also making a lot of sense. You can actually just tell also by the way that the questions were being framed to him from many in the English media that they were quite sympathetic to him. They were asking questions that reflected the fact that they thought Australia had been exceptionally hard done by. And there's no doubt that they were. The one decision in particular, penalising Karevi for going into a tackle, which was already a high tackle on him, and he was the ball carrier being penalised. I mean, no wonder Cheika reacted by saying he has now completely lost any concept of what rugby's about. He actually turned around to the media and said, look, I don't know what the rules are anymore. I don't know where we're going with this game. It feels to me like I can't coach my team anymore because I don't know what the officials are going to react to and how they want this game to be played. And he used the term that he was embarrassed as a former rugby player about what was going on out there. Now, you can take that with a pinch of salt if you like. He is that kind of guy. He does like to needle. He certainly attracts controversy wherever he goes. But on this particular occasion, he's absolutely spot on, and something really needs to change. Otherwise, the tournament's going to become a little bit ridiculous when we move into the quarterfinals.
Greg, obviously so much attention on the referees, as we've discussed. A lack of support from World Rugby, it seems. How are the officials, do you think, responding over in Japan?
Well, the short answer is badly, isn't it? We've seen this unprecedented step of World Rugby coming out after week one and putting a lot of pressure on the referees, telling them they weren't good enough, which really was a bit of an act of madness because all it's really done is put these guys under even more pressure than they've been on. And we, just again talking to Steve Hansen, he was being asked about it earlier, and he said there's no point in him commenting on it because all he's going to do if he comments on it is make a bad situation worse. And look, we've seen some bad decisions getting worse from referees. I think we saw Romain Poit, like, he just looked shell-shocked. He looked like he was a broken man. He didn't want to make a decision. He didn't look like he wanted to be out there. His heart seemed to sink when the TMO got involved and got in his ear. He was all over the place, and you ended up feeling quite sorry for this guy. And he's not been the only referee like that. And now it has become, I think when we talked last week, this was more of a social media phenomenon than it was mainstream media. Well, look, now it's mainstream media. Now every coach is going to be asked after every game, what did you think of the referee? What was that decision all about? And that is going to become the overbearing narrative of this tournament, which is slightly concerning because we all wanted the players to decide it and not the referees.
Gregor, Paul, thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, it seems now appropriate to bring you in, Jacko, and just get your take on World Rugby's stance here. They release a statement like that. I suppose a lack of support, it just seems bizarre. Why do you think that they would do something like that?
Well, the referee is a team there, so I mean they're trying to do their best, and I know in 2000, the last World Cup, you know, we tried everything to be part of a team. You know, we sort of said we're the 21st team of the World Cup, and you want to do well. So World Rugby actually coming out and saying, well, our team probably isn't up to where it should be, is something that we sort of talked about versus saying nothing. Now, I think the public and people don't want to hear nothing from referees. They want to hear how they feel they're going, because otherwise then people start speculating and talking behind their back, and it gets even worse. So I think this was an attempt of a sort of front foot to try and say, look, we've talked to our team, we want an improvement out of the performances. Does it put pressure on them? Yes, but they're athletes and they're professional people out there. So the actual added pressure on them would be like if you were in the All Blacks saying, well, we didn't play very well in that first game, we need to be better.
Talk us through what processes you go through after a test match. We know what rugby players go through, but yourself as a referee, when you finish a test, to ensure that there is that consistency across the board with the referees.
Well, first of all, if it's Australia, you run away from Michael Cheika, normally. No, so there's a fairly stiff review system of what we do as ourselves. So as a referee, you do a real intense personal review of the game. And then there is the coaches, so-called, which is people from the management that will then oversee it. And quite often we would get then clips and comments from the two coaches around where they see it is. So it's not a hidden thing between refereeing. Then that obviously doesn't then go anywhere. And that's always been the way with coaching and the refereeing, being able to talk around their decisions, and hopefully then can go back to the players.
Who are your coaches or the guys that oversee you?
Well, Alan Rallan's the boss of World Rugby. You know, so he's the 4 years he's sort of taken over. There's been a lot going on in terms of safety, changes of a few things how we look at. So he sort of oversees it. Then you've got the head of Europe and the head of Sanjo, which is Lyndon Bray, who form the selection group. Right.
Do you think refereeing in general is heading in the right direction, Glenn, or do you think maybe you know, more work needs to be done in light of what we've seen at this World Cup?
It's a great job to be part of. Like, you know, for people that wanting to get into referee, it'd be nothing worse than seeing this World Cup and then everyone deciding they don't want to referee. Our game needs refereeing. You know, is it going? This World Cup, of course, like I said, it hasn't really. There hasn't been one big decision that have changed the World Cup yet. They're under so much pressure. So, is it going in the right direction? I'm sure there's things that can always improve in terms of how we do it, how we make the game better. Spectacularly and also safety. So, you know, we're trying to fight those two things at the moment, and at the times it's creating a few issues.
Good on you. OK, don't go anywhere. After the break, we'll come back and we'll focus on a bit of domestic footy on the home front. We'll take a look at the latest round of the Mitre 10 Cup here on The Breakdown.
Stick around as we break down another exciting week of Mitre 10 action. And stay up to date on the World Cup with the good, the bad and the ugly, fresh from Japan.
Welcome back into the breakdown. Great to have your company tonight. Rightio, from the World Cup to the home front here in New Zealand, let's take a look at all the action from the latest round of the Mitre 10 Cup.
Week 8 of the Mitre 10 Cup kicked off in miserable conditions in New Plymouth, where Taranaki shut out Southland with 3 second-half tries.
Portroff wrapped around on the double. And now Portroff with the ball back on the inside. Sean Wainui offloads the ball for Walden.
Taranaki now sit 4th in the championship standings. It was another shutout in Nelson on Friday, where high-flying Tasman were ruthless in disposing of Auckland.
Big gap. Delays the pass back in field to Blackadder. Lovely ball on the inside. Vainga Nuku. He deserves that.
The title favourites were all class, scoring 6 tries, with Ethan Blackadder bagging a double.
They go to the line. Big pile of bodies. Can they get it down? Try.
And it's Bay of Plenty who can claim rights to being the real Bay with an impressive 50-point haul against rivals Hawke's Bay.
Tiatia slipped the first tackle. He's got Narawa on the right side now. He picks him up. Narawa, return ball on the inside. And Caleb Trask. What about Bay of Plenty?
Chase Tiatia was the star of the show with a hat-trick of tries.
Beautiful left foot step. Now he takes him on the outside. That is all Chase Tiatia.
Both Hawke's Bay and the Bay are now sitting pretty at 1 and 2 respectively on the championship table. There were tries galore at Wellington on Saturday afternoon, Northland putting in a much improved effort this round, but were no match for the finishing power of Wellington, who ran in 8 tries to 5.
And off goes Fafita. Real sight that is. Now Wellington looking to run it in. Patafilo, and he'll get another one right under the posts.
Wellington are now looking good for a home semi in the Premiership. It was another one-sided encounter in Christchurch as Canterbury flexed their muscles with a 38-point drubbing of Counties Monaco.
And Sam Gilbert scores.
Canterbury are now firmly in playoff contention and have a Ranfurly Shield challenge to look forward to this weekend.
Gilbert, he's got another one.
Waikato had high hopes of taking the Shield back off Otago and avenging last year's loss. But Otago are proving to be determined in their defence of the Shield, with the Koroi and Nariki show continuing to fire for the Southerners.
Inside the red zone and now Ioane to that man. Koroi! Koroi through! Philemoni Koroi throws the pass to Morris Lobby!
One more defence and it's locked up for the summer, and of course it's Canterbury standing in their way. And finally, in Palmerston North, it was North Harbour who came away with the points with a valuable win over the Turbos. Harbour are now clinging to 4th spot in the Premiership, a big match in Wellington this week.
And of course, we've got to address it. Well, we've got him here, of course, lifted the Ranfurly Shield with the Bay of Plenty. The Battle of the Bays, the Steamers getting it done over the Magpies. You must have been a very happy man indeed.
2:30 kick-off on a Sunday at Tauranga Domain. Can't get better, and they played awesome. You know, that first sort of 10 minutes up 19-0, and to credit to Hawke's Bay, they came back well, but, you know, it's good to finally have the real Bay being called the Bay this year.
Now, Chase Tiatia, we've talked about him pretty much all season. It seems, Andy, like this guy's been around forever, just how devastating he is, ball in hand.
23 years old. It does seem like he's been around forever. Yeah, beautiful skill set. He's quick. He's got that big left foot kick too. So he's a real versatility to have out on the field.
What do you make of the Bay this year, Marshy?
I think they've been outstanding. Yeah, right from the get-go. And like the real medal will come on them now, but under pressure so far they've been very good, impressive.
OK, it's right up there on the Dwayne Monkley medal table, Chase Tiatia. Let's look at Wellington. You were saying before, Richard, really, they have been an impressive side this year behind Tasman.
Yeah, I think on attack they've got all the weapons with Lamb and Co at the back, but it's their rush defence that they're putting almost strangling teams to death. I think they played Auckland 2 weeks ago and they had no answer for that sort of when they kept coming up off the line. And I think Duplessis Karifi, the captain, his work over the ball, being able to slow the ball down, even after line breaks, he's getting back. Some of the over-the-ball stuff is a little bit dubious, but he's not getting pulled up for it. He's walking right on that fine line that good number 7s do.
Genuine title threat for Tasman. I know that a daylight second at the moment, but maybe
Tasman,
they could be.
Canterbury, Tasman.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome finish, and you know, player footy is different footy. So yeah, there'll be 2 or 3 or 4 teams who are right up there.
Yeah, I think those two I think Tasman and Wellington are probably the front runners at the moment. And then obviously Canterbury, they didn't start the season that well, but they're heating up, and Canterbury's always somewhere in the mix. So I think your top two are almost pretty sorted now.
We'll go pick up a shield and then...
Oh,
yeah,
please.
why not?
There is a big shield challenge this weekend, but let's talk about Otago, Marshy, and they seem to have kept their powder dry. They want to keep this log of wood for the summer. They were very impressive against Waikato, weren't they?
And I think that's just testament to how valued the shield is, and I'm pleased to see that history has not left the shield at all, that Otago have really fronted. They haven't been so great on the road, but they've brought out some superstars like Kororoi's been outstanding. You know, the likes of Adam Thompson coming back, but look, for a side that isn't so much filled with superstars, they've been simply outstanding, and I think that old adage of the shield brings out the best in players is certainly happening with them.
Marshy, wasn't it awesome to see too? Like Shield Rugby, you should go and have to win it each week. You do have it, and I reckon that game in the weekend was a great example of two teams who were playing footy and they were attacking and they were going out there to try and win it.
Yeah,
we don't usually preview, but there's two Cantabrians sitting. I know you.
We'll just keep talking, shall we?
Bring it home, bring it home.
OK, let's go to Steph now with the good, the bad and the ugly from the week in rugby, Steph.
Yeah, so the good this week was definitely the fanfare after Japan defeated Ireland. It doesn't get much better than this. This is just... Look at the fans. They're just going absolutely crazy.
Where were you guys? I was in an Irish bar in Christchurch, despondent Irishmen everywhere. What about you guys?
I was in the Tote Club down in Tokoroa there. Not a big crowd down there, but I remember about 4 years ago when Japan beat South Africa in the pool play. It just changed the whole landscape of rugby in Japan. This is just going to elevate it to another level again.
I watched their opening game in Tokyo in a pub, and it was pretty awesome atmosphere. I could only imagine what it was like after that win and that game, because it was an outstanding game as well.
We'll talk about
Japan won.
We'll talk about Japan. What do you reckon it was like in Ireland?
Wouldn't have been much Guinness going down.
Well, that's the bad, wasn't it, Steph? What was the bad?
That's moving on to the bad. So the bad was Ireland's game plan, especially in the second half. What do you guys think about this?
What do you reckon, Jacko?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit like the Scotland game. You know, they went out, they played so well in that first 40 minutes and then just sort of went asleep. So, I mean, I think obviously with Joe being one of the good coaches around, you know, it's something he's got to really look at, how they're sort of going in the second half and getting a bit flat around how they're playing. And I think we touched on it, or JK did, round 6 and not playing. Probably just they ran out of ideas, and Japan, fair credit there.
And not a lot of good press. Not a lot of good press, Jacko, Steph, for the Irish, the ugly.
Yes, moving on to the ugly. So every 4 years, there's got to be someone who stirs the pot, and this year it seems to be Ewan McKenna. So he's basically saying on here. He's basically saying that Ireland and Japan shouldn't have happened and shouldn't have played, and he wrote this before the game even started. So Japan went on to win, so there we go.
Very good. Now, we've got Big in Japan at some point, I think, don't we?
Yes, we do. So Big in Japan. So don't forget Big in Japan. Kirsty, JK, Mills and John de Villiers kicks off tomorrow night at 8:30, followed by our Big in Japan match day show. So don't miss it.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Steph. Guys, just before we go, a quick prediction. Canada All Blacks, I suppose it's margin of victory, Cax.
Yeah, I think the All Blacks will be looking for a good performance, but maybe something around 70 points, I would say.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you, mate.
Good on you. Thanks very much for coming in, boys. He's looking forward to the Shield. I'm with you. That's us for another week. Thanks very much for joining us on The Breakdown. Good night from Sky.